Picture this for a moment. You're standing in the scorching desert of modern-day Iraq, surrounded by nothing but endless sand dunes and the whisper of ancient winds. Beneath your feet lies the remnant of what was once the cradle of human civilization. Here, over 5,000 years ago, a mysterious people emerged from the mists of prehistory and built something that would forever change the course of humanity. They called themselves the Sumerians, and their stories will send chills down your spine. Welcome back to Dream Vault Mysteries, where we unlock the secrets that history forgot. If you're fascinated by ancient enigmas and supernatural legends that defy explanation, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button right now, because what we're about to explore today will challenge everything you think you know about our earliest ancestors. The Sumerians didn't just invent writing or build the first cities. They left behind a collection of myths so terrifying, so otherworldly, and so eerily prophetic that they continue to haunt scholars and mystery enthusiasts to this very day. These aren't your typical bedtime stories. These are accounts of cosmic battles, divine interventions, and creatures that seem ripped straight from a science fiction nightmare. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. The more archaeologists dig, the more they realize that these weren't just stories to the Sumerians. These were historical records, sacred texts, eyewitness accounts of events they believed actually happened. And when you start connecting the dots between their mythology and unexplained archaeological discoveries, you'll begin to understand why some researchers are asking questions that make mainstream academia extremely uncomfortable. Today, we're diving headfirst into the darkest corners of Sumerian mythology, where gods walk among mortals, where the line between reality and nightmare becomes impossibly thin, and where ancient warnings about humanity's future still echo through the corridors of time. So settle in, because once you hear these stories, you'll never look at human history the same way again. Let's begin with the most chilling creation myth ever recorded by human hands. According to Sumerian texts carved into clay tablets thousands of years before the Bible was written, humanity didn't evolve naturally. We were manufactured, created in laboratories by beings who descended from the heavens with technology that seemed like pure magic to our ancestors. The tablets speak of the Anunnaki, whose name literally translates to those who came from heaven to earth. These weren't benevolent gods watching over humanity from some distant realm. These were physical beings who walked among the Sumerians, who demanded worship, who required service, and who possessed knowledge that allowed them to reshape life itself. The creation story begins in what the Sumerians called the Abzu, a mysterious underwater realm where the god Enki conducted experiments that would make modern geneticists tremble. According to the myths, the Anunnaki had grown tired of the backbreaking labor required to extract precious metals from the earth. Gold, in particular, was essential to their survival, though the texts remain frustratingly vague about exactly why these divine beings needed such vast quantities of this metal. The solution was as brilliant as it was terrifying. Enki, the master of genetic manipulation, would create a new species, a hybrid creature combining the essence of the gods with the primitive hominids that already roamed the earth. The process, as described in the tablets, involved mixing clay from the riverbed with the blood of a sacrificed god. But scholars now believe this may have been ancient terminology for genetic material. What emerges from these creation accounts is a picture that will make your blood run cold. Humanity wasn't created out of love or divine inspiration. We were created as a slave species, biological robots designed to mine gold and serve the needs of our creators. The tablets describe how the first humans were bred in artificial wombs, how their lifespans were deliberately shortened to prevent rebellion, and how their intelligence was carefully limited to ensure obedience. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. According to Sumerian mythology, the experiment went horribly wrong. The created beings began to develop beyond their programming. They started to think independently, to question their purpose, to rebel against their creators. Some even began to reproduce with the Anunnaki themselves, creating hybrid offspring that possessed both human creativity and divine knowledge. This is where we encounter one of the most spine-tingling aspects of Sumerian mythology. The tablets speak of a great council of the gods who decided that humanity had become too dangerous to survive. They would be wiped out completely through a catastrophic flood that would reset the experiment and allow the Anunnaki to start over with a more controllable species. The flood narrative that appears in Sumerian texts predates the biblical account by over 1,000 years, but it contains details that are far more disturbing than anything found in later versions. The Sumerian flood wasn't just a punishment for wickedness, it was a calculated genocide designed to eliminate a species that had outgrown its usefulness. Yet even more chilling is what happened next. According to the tablets, not all of the Anunnaki agreed with this decision. The god Enki, who had helped create humanity in the first place, secretly warned a human named Ziusudra about the coming disaster. He instructed this chosen to build a massive survivor vessel and preserve not just his family, but samples of all life on Earth. This act of defiance split the Anunnaki into two factions: those who wanted to maintain control over humanity, and those who believed their creations deserved the chance to evolve and develop independently. The tablets suggest this cosmic civil war continues to this day, with different factions of these ancient beings still influencing human affairs from the shadows. But the creation myths are just the beginning of Sumerian supernatural terror. Their pantheon is filled with entities that seem more like cosmic horror than traditional deities. Take Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, who rules over a realm of darkness where the dead exist in a state of eternal torment. Or Lamashtu, a female demon who feeds on newborn children and pregnant women, whose very name was enough to send ancient families into panic. The Sumerians described creatures that sound suspiciously like modern accounts of alien encounters. The Igigi, lesser gods who served the Anunnaki, were said to watch humanity from the skies in flying vehicles that blazed like fire. They could appear and disappear at will, possessed technology that could level mountains, and communicated through telepathic means that bypassed human language entirely. What unsettling is their consistency across makes these accounts truly thousands of tablets found in different cities throughout Mesopotamia. These weren't local folk tales that varied from region to region. They were standardized accounts that suggest either remarkable coordination among ancient storytellers or documentation of actual events that multiple witnesses experienced. The Sumerians also left behind detailed descriptions of otherworldly locations that their gods supposedly inhabited. The tablets speak of underground cities with artificial lighting, of flying palaces that moved between Earth and distant stars, and of doorways that could transport beings instantly across vast distances. To ancient minds, such descriptions must have seemed like pure fantasy. But to modern readers familiar with advanced technology, they read more like technical manuals than mythology. Perhaps most disturbing of all are the Sumerian accounts of ongoing surveillance and intervention in human affairs. The tablets describe how the Anunnaki monitor human development, how they periodically intervene to guide or redirect civilization, and how they have agents embedded within human society who report back on our progress. These aren't distant gods who created the world and then left. These are active participants in an ongoing experiment with humanity as the test subjects. The implications of these ancient texts become even more chilling when you consider the Sumerian obsession with astronomical precision. Their knowledge of planetary movements, stellar positions, and cosmic cycles was impossibly advanced for a civilization that supposedly had just discovered agriculture. They possessed star charts that wouldn't be rediscovered by modern science until the invention of powerful telescopes, and they tracked celestial events with an accuracy that suggests access to observational technology far beyond anything found in their ruins. This astronomical knowledge wasn't just academic curiosity. According to the tablets, it was directly connected to the return of the Anunnaki. The Sumerians believed that their creators would come back to Earth at specific celestial alignments, and they built their entire religious calendar around preparing for this event. Temple rituals, agricultural cycles, and even royal succession were all timed to cosmic events that the Sumerians claimed would signal the return of the gods. What happens when beings with godlike technology return to find that their creation has developed nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering capabilities of their own? The Sumerian tablets suggest this reunion won't be the joyous homecoming that some ancient astronaut theorists imagine. Instead, they describe it as a time of judgment, where humanity will be evaluated to determine whether we've fulfilled our original purpose or evolved beyond our creator's control. The evidence continues to mount that something extraordinary happened in ancient Mesopotamia. Archaeological discoveries keep revealing technologies and knowledge that shouldn't exist in a Bronze Age civilization. Precision-cut stones that require diamond-tipped tools, metallurgy techniques that produce alloys modern science struggles to replicate, and architectural achievements that challenge our understanding of ancient capabilities. But perhaps the most chilling evidence comes from the Sumerians themselves, their detailed records of interactions with beings they clearly didn't consider mythological, their matter-of-fact descriptions of technologies they claimed to witness firsthand, their warnings about humanity's future relationship with our creators. These weren't primitive people spinning campfire tales. These were sophisticated urban dwellers with advanced mathematics, complex legal systems, and detailed astronomical knowledge. When they carved these accounts into permanent stone and clay records, they were documenting what they believed to be historical fact. And if they were right, if even a fraction of their accounts reflect actual events rather than mythology, then humanity's true origins are far more disturbing than anything our history books dare to admit. The deeper you dig into Sumerian records, the more you realize their gods weren't distant, ethereal beings dwelling in some heavenly realm. They were flesh and blood entities who ate, slept, fought, and died just like mortals. But what sets them apart from every other ancient pantheon is the disturbing level of detail the Sumerians provided about their physical characteristics and technological capabilities. Take Enlil, the supreme god of air and authority. The tablets don't just describe him as a powerful deity, they provide specific details about his residence, his daily routines, even his dietary preferences. He lived in a massive ziggurat called the Ekur, which the Sumerians described as reaching into the clouds, with chambers that glowed with their own internal light. The building required no torches or oil lamps because the walls themselves emanated a cold blue radiance that never dimmed. More unsettling are the accounts of Enlil's moods and their catastrophic effects on the physical world. When angered, the tablets describe how the very air around him would become thick and oppressive, causing humans to suffocate without warning. His voice could shatter stone and level entire city blocks. Most chilling of all, the Sumerians claimed that Enlil possessed what they called the Tablet of Destinies, a device that could rewrite reality itself by altering the fundamental laws that governed existence. But it's the goddess Inanna whose mythology will truly make your skin crawl. Known as the Queen of Heaven and Earth, Inanna's story reads like a cosmic horror novel written in blood and starlight. According to the epic of Inanna's descent, she deliberately chose to journey into the underworld, not out of curiosity or heroism, but to conquer death itself and expand her dominion over both the living and the dead. The tablets describe her descent through 7 gates, each one stripping away not just her clothing and jewelry, but pieces of her very essence. By the time she reached the throne room of her sister Ereshkigal, Inanna had been reduced to a corpse, hung on a meat hook like slaughtered cattle. But here's where the story becomes truly terrifying. Inanna's death wasn't permanent. 3 days later, she was resurrected through technologies the Sumerians could barely comprehend, let alone describe. The resurrection process, as detailed in the tablets, involved mysterious beings called the Gala, who appeared in the underworld carrying devices that could restore life to decomposing flesh. These weren't magical spells or divine miracles. The Sumerians described them as tools, machines that emitted strange sounds and lights while working to reconstruct Inanna's body from the cellular level upward. When Inanna finally returned to the surface world, she brought with her knowledge that fundamentally changed Sumerian civilization. Suddenly, their priests possessed detailed understanding of anatomy, surgical procedures, and pharmacology that wouldn't be rediscovered by mainstream medicine for thousands of years. The tablets suggest that Inanna's journey wasn't just a mythological adventure, it was reconnaissance, a fact-finding mission into the nature of death itself. But perhaps the most spine-chilling aspect of Inanna's story is what happened to her companion, Dumuzi. The tablets reveal that someone had to take her place in the underworld, and she chose her own consort for this eternal punishment. Not because he betrayed her, but because the cosmic balance demanded it. One life for another, one soul condemned to darkness, so that another could walk in the light. This wasn't justice as humans understand it. This was the cold calculation of beings who viewed mortal life as expendable resources in some vast, incomprehensible experiment. The Sumerians didn't worship Inanna despite her cruelty. They worshipped her because of it, recognizing that survival in a universe ruled by such entities required absolute submission to their alien moral framework. The mythology becomes even more disturbing when you examine the Sumerian accounts of divine reproduction. Unlike the clean, sanitized creation myths found in later religions, Sumerian texts describe genetic experiments that went horribly wrong. The tablets speak of hybrid offspring born from unions between gods and humans, creatures so monstrous that they had to be hidden away in underground chambers or destroyed outright. One particularly chilling account describes the birth of demons called the Sabiti, 7 brothers created through forbidden genetic manipulation. These beings possessed human intelligence combined with supernatural strength and an insatiable hunger for destruction. The tablets suggest they were early prototypes in the Anunnaki's ongoing attempts to create the perfect servant species, experiments that failed so catastrophically that even their creators feared what they had unleashed. The Sumerians believed these failed experiments still existed, hidden in deep caves and abandoned ruins throughout Mesopotamia. Temple priests performed elaborate rituals designed to keep these entities contained, using combinations of sound frequencies, electromagnetic fields, and chemical barriers that the tablets describe in surprisingly technical detail. What makes these accounts particularly unnerving is their consistency with modern cryptozoological reports, descriptions of creatures that seem to match contemporary sightings of unexplained entities. beings that possess characteristics no natural evolutionary process could have produced. The tablets suggest these aren't separate phenomena but connected manifestations of ancient experiments that never truly ended. The Sumerian underworld mythology reveals perhaps the darkest aspects of their cosmic worldview. Unlike later cultures that developed concepts of judgment and redemption, the Sumerians believed death led to a realm of eternal monotony where souls existed as shadows of their former selves, neither punished nor rewarded, but simply forgotten. The tablets describe the underworld as a vast bureaucratic nightmare overseen by Ereshkigal and her consort Nergal, entities who process the dead with mechanical efficiency. Souls weren't judged based on moral behavior, but catalogued according to their usefulness in the afterlife economy. Some became servants to the gods, others were recycled back into the material world, and the most unfortunate were simply dissolved into component spiritual energy to fuel the underworld's operations. This wasn't metaphorical poetry. The Sumerians provided detailed maps of the underworld's geography, organizational charts of its administrative hierarchy, and even accounting records of soul processing quotas. They treated death not as a spiritual transition, but as an industrial process, complete with quality control measures and efficiency standards that would make a modern corporation proud. But here's what will really keep you awake at night. The tablets suggest this underworld processing system wasn't limited to natural deaths. The Sumerians described harvest events where the gods would deliberately cull human populations to meet underworld production requirements. Plagues, famines, and wars weren't random tragedies but scheduled operations designed to maintain optimal soul flow through the afterlife infrastructure. The mythology reveals a universe where human consciousness itself is a commodity, harvested and refined by entities whose motivations remain utterly alien to mortal understanding. We aren't just temporary biological vessels, we're renewable resources in a cosmic economy that operates on principles that would drive any rational person to madness. And according to Sumerian prophecy, this harvest cycle is still active. The tablets describe signs and portents that would herald the next major culling event, astronomical alignments and technological developments that would signal when human population had reached levels requiring divine intervention. When you start comparing these ancient warnings with current global conditions, the parallels become impossible to ignore. The Sumerians predicted that their gods would return when humans achieved the ability to fly like birds, speak across vast distances, and harness the power of the stars themselves. They described a time when knowledge would multiply exponentially, when humans would create artificial servants, and when the boundary between life and death would begin to blur. Sound familiar? We've achieved powered flight, global communication, nuclear energy, exponential information growth, artificial intelligence, and we're rapidly approaching technological resurrection of the dead through advanced medicine and digital consciousness transfer. According to Sumerian prophecy, we're living through the exact conditions they warned would trigger the return of the Anunnaki. And if their mythology is even partially based on historical fact, that return won't be the benevolent reunion that some ancient astronaut enthusiasts imagine. The tablets describe it as a time of final judgment, when humanity's cosmic experiment will either be deemed successful and allowed to continue, or classified as a failed mutation requiring immediate termination and replacement. The choice, according to Sumerian mythology, isn't ours to make. It never was. The evidence hidden within Sumerian tablets reveals something that will make your blood freeze in your veins. These ancient records don't just describe interactions with otherworldly beings. They provide detailed technical specifications for technologies that shouldn't exist in any Bronze Age civilization. Yet somehow the Sumerians possessed knowledge that modern science is only beginning to understand. Consider the mysterious objects the Sumerians called me, pronounced may. These weren't abstract concepts or spiritual principles. The tablets describe them as physical devices that contained the fundamental programs governing reality itself. Each ME controlled specific aspects of existence, from the laws of physics to the biological processes that sustain life. The gods didn't just possess these devices, they fought wars over them, traded them, and used them to reshape entire civilizations. What's truly chilling is how the Sumerians described the ME in operation. They emitted frequencies that could alter matter at the molecular level, projected holographic displays that showed events occurring in distant locations, and contained databases of genetic information for every living species on Earth. When Inanna stole the ME from her father Enki, she didn't just acquire divine power, she gained access to what can only be described as advanced nanotechnology. The tablets detail how these devices could be programmed to create new forms of life, modify existing organisms, or even resurrect the dead by rebuilding their cellular structure from stored templates. This wasn't magic in any traditional sense. The Sumerians provided step-by-step procedures, safety protocols, and troubleshooting guides that read more like technical manuals than religious texts. But here's where the mythology becomes truly nightmarish. According to Sumerian records, humanity wasn't given access to this technology because we lacked the wisdom to use it responsibly. The tablets describe catastrophic accidents that occurred when humans attempted to operate divine machinery without proper training. Entire cities transformed into twisted landscapes of living metal and flesh. Populations mutated beyond recognition, experiments that opened doorways to dimensions filled with entities that fed on human consciousness. The Sumerians believed these disasters weren't accidents but tests, deliberate challenges designed to measure humanity's readiness for technological advancement. Those who survived demonstrated the qualities their creators valued. Those who didn't became cautionary tales carved into stone for future generations. What makes these accounts particularly unsettling is their consistency with unexplained archaeological discoveries throughout Mesopotamia. Researchers have found evidence of extreme heat damage in ancient ruins, temperatures so intense that stone was literally melted and reformed. They've discovered metallic objects embedded in rock formations that shouldn't exist according to conventional geology. Most disturbing of all, they've uncovered human remains that show signs of genetic modification using techniques that modern science can barely comprehend. The deeper you explore Sumerian mythology, the more you realize their gods weren't just powerful beings with advanced technology. They were conducting experiments on a planetary scale, using Earth itself as a laboratory and every living creature as test subjects in research projects whose ultimate purpose remains hidden from human understanding. Take the legend of the Tablet of Destinies, a device so powerful that whoever possessed it could rewrite the fundamental laws governing reality. The tablets describe this object as containing the source code for the universe itself, programs that determined everything from gravitational constants to the speed of light. When the bird god Anzu stole this tablet from Enlil, it didn't just threaten divine authority. It risked unraveling the basic structure of existence. The epic describing this theft reads like a cosmic thriller where reality itself hangs in the balance. Mountains began floating in the sky, rivers flowed backward, the sun stood still while stars moved in impossible patterns. Time itself became unstable, with some regions experiencing rapid acceleration while others froze in temporal loops that trapped inhabitants in endless cycles of the same moment. The recovery mission to retrieve the Tablet of Destinies involved technologies that sound suspiciously like modern military hardware. The tablets describe flying vehicles that moved faster than thought, weapons that could disintegrate matter at the subatomic level, and defensive systems that created impenetrable barriers in space-time itself. The battle between Ninurta and Anzu wasn't fought with primitive swords and shields. It was a high-tech warfare scenario that would fit perfectly in a modern science fiction film. What's most disturbing about this myth is its ending. When Ninurta finally recovered the Tablet of Destinies, he didn't return it to Enlil. Instead, he kept it for himself, using its power to restructure the cosmic hierarchy according to his own vision. The tablet suggests this wasn't theft, but evolution, a natural progression where each generation of divine beings surpassed their predecessors through superior understanding of universal operating systems. The implications are staggering. If Sumerian mythology reflects actual historical events, then we're living in a universe where fundamental reality can be reprogrammed by anyone with sufficient technological advancement. The laws of physics aren't immutable constants, but software parameters that can be modified by entities with root access to the cosmic operating system. This brings us to one of the most spine-chilling aspects of Sumerian prophecy. The tablets describe a time when humanity would develop its own reality-altering technology, when we would discover how to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level. According to these ancient warnings, this achievement wouldn't represent human advancement, but a direct threat to our Creator's authority. The Sumerians predicted that when humans gained access to universe editing capabilities, the Anunnaki would return not as benevolent teachers but as system administrators, performing emergency maintenance on a corrupted reality. They would reset human civilization to factory defaults, eliminating any modifications we had made to the original programming. Looking at current technological development, we're rapidly approaching exactly the capabilities the Sumerians warned about. Quantum computing, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology are giving us unprecedented power to modify the fundamental building blocks of reality. We're developing the ability to create new forms of matter, design custom organisms, and even manipulate space-time itself through advanced physics research. According to Sumerian mythology, these achievements aren't signs of human progress, but triggers for divine intervention. We're approaching the threshold where our technological capabilities pose an existential threat to the cosmic order our creators established. The tablets suggest this confrontation is inevitable, encoded into the very structure of reality as a fail-safe mechanism to prevent any species from exceeding predetermined evolutionary boundaries. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Sumerian mythology is what it reveals about the nature of consciousness itself. The tablets don't treat awareness as an emergent property of complex neural networks. They describe it as a fundamental force of the universe, a form of energy that can be harvested, stored, and manipulated just like any other resource. The Sumerians believed that consciousness existed independently of biological vessels, that it could be transferred between bodies, copied into artificial containers, or even merged with other awareness to create hybrid entities with capabilities far exceeding their individual components. Their myths are filled with stories of gods who possessed multiple bodies simultaneously, beings who could divide their consciousness across vast distances while maintaining unified identity, Thesor. The tablets provide detailed technical descriptions of consciousness transfer procedures. Complete wasn't primitive animism or spiritual metaph, with equipment specifications and safety protocols. They describe devices that could extract awareness from dying beings and implant it into prepared vessels, technologies that could merge multiple consciousness streams into collective entities, and systems that could store individual awareness in crystalline matrices for indefinite periods. the implications for human understanding of identity and mortality are staggering. If the Sumerians were documenting actual technologies rather than creating elaborate fantasies, then everything we believe about the nature of consciousness, death, and individual identity is fundamentally wrong. The tablets suggest that what we consider death is merely a transition between different states of consciousness, that individual identity is far more fluid than we imagine, and that awareness itself is a form of technology that can be engineered and modified by entities with sufficient understanding of its underlying mechanisms. This brings us to the most chilling prophecy in all of Sumerian mythology. The tablets describe a future time when humanity would develop its own consciousness manipulation technology, when we would discover how to transfer awareness between bodies and create artificial beings with genuine sentience. According to these ancient warnings, this achievement would represent the final stage of human evolution, the moment when we would either transcend our biological limitations or be destroyed by powers that refuse to allow any species to challenge their monopoly on consciousness technology. We're living through exactly the technological revolution the Sumerians predicted. Advances in neuroscience are revealing the mechanisms underlying consciousness. Artificial intelligence is approaching genuine sentience. Brain-computer interfaces are creating direct connections between biological and digital systems. We're rapidly approaching the capability to transfer human awareness into artificial vessels, effectively achieving technological immortality. According to Sumerian prophecy, these achievements will trigger the return of our creators, not to celebrate our advancement, but to prevent us from accessing technologies that could challenge their authority over the fundamental forces of existence. The tablets describe this confrontation as unavoidable, a cosmic checkpoint built into the structure of reality itself. The question that should keep you awake at night is simple. What happens when beings who view human consciousness as their intellectual property discover that their creations have learned to modify, transfer, and replicate awareness without permission? The Sumerian tablets provide a clear answer, and it's not one that offers much hope for humanity's survival. We're not just approaching a technological singularity. According to the oldest recorded prophecies in human history, we're racing toward a cosmic reckoning that will determine whether our species deserves to continue existing or should be terminated as a failed experiment that exceeded its programmed limitations. The evidence continues mounting that something extraordinary happened in ancient Mesopotamia, something that left traces in mythology so detailed and consistent that they challenge every assumption about human history and our place in the universe. The Sumerians didn't just create the first civilization, they documented humanity's first contact with forces beyond our comprehension, forces that may still be watching, waiting, and preparing for our final evaluation. And if you think that's unsettling, wait until you hear what the tablets reveal about the true purpose behind human genetic modification and the horrifying experiments that are still being conducted on our species to this very day. The genetic manipulation programs described in Sumerian texts will haunt your dreams long after you've finished watching this video. But before we dive deeper into this cosmic nightmare, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because Dream Vault Mysteries is your gateway to the most terrifying secrets hidden in plain sight throughout human history. The tablets reveal something that mainstream archaeology desperately wants to keep buried. The Anunnaki didn't just create humanity once and walk away. They've been conducting ongoing genetic experiments on our species for thousands of years, systematically modifying human DNA to serve purposes that would make any rational person question everything they've been told about evolution and natural selection. According to Sumerian records, the initial human prototype was far too primitive to serve their creator's needs effectively. The first attempts at genetic hybridization produced beings with incredible physical strength but limited cognitive abilities. These early humans could perform manual labor but lacked the intelligence necessary for complex tasks like metallurgy, astronomy, and temple construction. The tablets describe a series of genetic upgrades implemented over multiple generations. Each modification enhanced specific human capabilities while deliberately limiting others. Intelligence was increased but capped at levels that would prevent rebellion. Lifespans were extended to allow for better skill development, but kept short enough to prevent the accumulation of dangerous knowledge. Most chilling of all, reproductive systems were engineered with built-in obsolescence triggers that could be activated remotely if the human population grew beyond manageable levels. What makes these accounts truly terrifying is their clinical precision. The Sumerians didn't describe these genetic modifications as divine miracles or magical transformations. They documented them as technical procedures performed in specialized facilities using equipment that sounds suspiciously like modern biotechnology laboratories. The tablets mention sterile chambers, genetic materials stored in crystalline matrices, and artificial gestation environments that could accelerate fetal development while implementing precise genetic modifications. The god Enki, portrayed as the chief genetic engineer in these operations, possessed what the tablets call the essence of life itself. This wasn't some mystical life force, but appears to be advanced understanding of DNA manipulation techniques. The texts describe how Enki could isolate specific genetic sequences, modify them according to predetermined specifications, and integrate the results into living organisms with surgical precision. But here's where the mythology becomes absolutely spine-chilling. The genetic modifications weren't limited to basic human capabilities. The tablets describe specialized human variants engineered for specific purposes. Some possessed enhanced sensory abilities that allowed them to detect electromagnetic frequencies beyond normal human perception. Others were modified for extreme longevity, living for centuries while maintaining physical prime. Most disturbing of all were the variants designed as biological receivers, humans whose nervous systems were modified to interface directly with Anunnaki communication networks. These enhanced humans served as living surveillance equipment, monitoring regular human populations and reporting back to their creators through neural implants that the tablets describe in disturbingly modern terms. The technology involved microscopic devices that could be implanted during genetic modification procedures, creating permanent communication channels between human consciousness and Anunnaki control systems. The Sumerians believed these enhanced variants still existed within human populations, indistinguishable from regular people except for their ability to access information networks that remained invisible to unmodified humans. They described these individuals as bridges between worlds, capable of receiving instructions from their creators and implementing changes in human society without detection. What's most unnerving about these accounts is how closely they match modern reports of unexplained phenomena. People who claim to receive information through unknown channels, individuals with seemingly impossible knowledge about events they couldn't have witnessed, families with genetic anomalies that medical science cannot explain. The tablets suggest these aren't random occurrences, but evidence of ongoing genetic experimentation that never actually stopped. The Sumerian records indicate that genetic modification wasn't limited to individual humans, but extended to entire bloodlines. Certain families were systematically altered to carry specific genetic markers that would activate under predetermined conditions. These dormant modifications could remain inactive for generations, before triggering in response to environmental factors or external signals from their creators. The tablets describe these genetic time bombs as insurance policies, ensuring that human development would remain within acceptable parameters, regardless of how far civilization advanced. If humans began developing capabilities that threatened Anunnaki authority, the dormant genetic modifications would activate, either eliminating the threat through selective population reduction or redirecting human evolution along more manageable pathways. This brings us to one of the most horrifying implications of Sumerian genetic mythology. The text suggests that modern humans aren't the product of natural evolution, but represent the latest iteration in an ongoing genetic experiment. Every major advancement in human civilization, from agriculture to technology to space exploration, has been guided by genetic modifications implemented thousands of years ago, but designed to activate at specific stages of development. The Sumerians predicted that these genetic programs would reach their culmination when humans achieved the ability to modify their own DNA. According to the tablets, this represents the final test of human worthiness. If we use genetic engineering to improve ourselves according to our Creator's original specifications, we'll be allowed to continue existing. If we attempt to modify ourselves beyond predetermined boundaries, the genetic kill switches embedded in our DNA will activate. Looking at current genetic research, we're rapidly approaching exactly the capabilities the Sumerians warned about. CRISPR technology is giving us unprecedented ability to edit human DNA. Gene therapy is eliminating hereditary diseases. Genetic enhancement research is exploring ways to improve human intelligence, strength, and longevity. We're on the verge of becoming our own genetic engineers, but according to Sumerian mythology, this achievement will trigger security protocols embedded in human DNA by our creators. The tablets describe cascading genetic failures that would eliminate any humans who exceeded their programmed evolutionary boundaries. These wouldn't be random mutations, but targeted cellular breakdowns designed to prevent unauthorized genetic modifications from spreading through the population. The evidence supporting these terrifying possibilities continues mounting. Researchers have discovered segments of human DNA that appear to serve no biological function, genetic sequences that remain dormant but intact across all human populations. Some scientists call this junk DNA, but the Sumerian tablets suggest these mysterious genetic segments might be dormant programs waiting for activation signals. Even more disturbing are recent discoveries of genetic anomalies that appear to be artificially induced. Human populations with DNA modifications that couldn't have occurred through natural evolutionary processes. Genetic markers that appear suddenly in isolated communities with no external genetic input. Hereditary traits that emerge spontaneously in families with no previous history of such characteristics. The tablets reveal that these genetic interventions aren't random, but follow patterns established by the original Anunnaki genetic programming. Modifications appear in response to environmental pressures that threaten human survival, ensuring that our species continues developing along predetermined pathways. We're not evolving naturally, we're following a genetic roadmap created by entities whose ultimate goals remain hidden from human understanding. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Sumerian genetic mythology is what it reveals about human consciousness itself. The tablets don't treat awareness as an emergent property of complex neural networks, but describe it as a form of genetic software that can be programmed, modified, and controlled through DNA manipulation. According to these ancient records, human consciousness wasn't an accidental byproduct of genetic complexity, but a deliberately engineered feature designed to serve specific functions. Our ability to think, create and question wasn't given to us as a gift, but installed as necessary software for the tasks our creators required us to perform. The tablets describe consciousness modification procedures that sound like advanced neuroscience combined with genetic engineering. Specific DNA sequences that control neural development, genetic switches that determine personality traits, and hereditary programs that influence human behavior patterns across entire populations. The Anunnaki didn't just create human bodies, they programmed human minds according to detailed specifications. This genetic consciousness programming explains many aspects of human behavior that evolutionary psychology struggles to address. Our instinctive reverence for authority figures, our tendency to seek meaning through religious experiences, our compulsive need to build increasingly complex civilizations. According to Sumerian mythology, these aren't evolved survival strategies, but programmed behaviors designed to make humans more effective servants. The tablets reveal that different human populations received different consciousness programming depending on their intended functions. Some groups were programmed for agricultural labor with genetic modifications that enhanced patience and acceptance of repetitive tasks. Others received warrior programming that emphasized aggression and loyalty to leadership hierarchies. The most sophisticated programming was reserved for priest rulers, humans whose consciousness was modified to interface directly with Anunnaki control systems. These consciousness modifications weren't permanent, but could be adjusted through genetic interventions performed during specific developmental stages. The tablets describe procedures for altering human personality traits, modifying intelligence levels, and even implanting artificial memories that would guide behavior patterns throughout an individual's lifetime. What makes these accounts particularly disturbing is their suggestion that consciousness modification technology is still active within human populations. The tablets describe genetic switches that activate during periods of social stress, automatically adjusting human behavior to maintain stability according to Anunnaki specifications. When civilizations become too chaotic, genetic programs activate that increase cooperation and reduce conflict. When populations become too complacent, different programs trigger that increase innovation and expansion. Looking at human history through this lens reveals patterns that are impossible to explain through conventional understanding of social development. Simultaneous technological breakthroughs in isolated civilizations, mysterious population behaviors that emerge spontaneously across different cultures, religious movements that spread with impossible speed despite lacking organized promotion. The tablets suggest these aren't random historical accidents, but evidence of genetic consciousness programming activating in response to predetermined triggers. The mythology becomes even more terrifying when you consider its implications for modern human development. We're living through a period of unprecedented technological advancement, social change, and global connectivity. According to Sumerian prophecy, these conditions represent the final phase of human genetic programming, the stage where our consciousness modifications will either successfully guide us toward our Creator's ultimate purpose or fail catastrophically and require emergency intervention. The tablets describe this final phase as a time when human consciousness would expand beyond its programmed limitations, when we would begin questioning the fundamental assumptions about reality that our genetic programming was designed to maintain. They predicted that humans would develop technologies capable of detecting and modifying the consciousness programming itself, potentially freeing our species from genetic control systems that have guided human development for millennia. But according to these ancient warnings, such freedom would be temporary. The moment humans achieved genuine consciousness independence, genetic kill switches embedded throughout our DNA would activate, eliminating any individuals who successfully broke free from their programming. The survivors would be those who remained within acceptable parameters, ensuring that human consciousness never exceeded the boundaries established by our creators. The evidence supporting this terrifying scenario is mounting rapidly. Advances in neuroscience are revealing the genetic basis of consciousness. Brain imaging technology is detecting neural patterns that suggest external programming of human thought processes. Most disturbing of all, genetic research is uncovering DNA sequences that appear to control specific aspects of human awareness and decision-making capabilities. We're approaching the exact technological capabilities that Sumerian mythology warned would trigger the final genetic protocols. The ability to read and modify human consciousness at the genetic level, the power to enhance human intelligence beyond programmed limitations, the technology to free human awareness from external control systems. According to the tablets, this achievement will represent humanity's final examination, pass, and will be allowed to continue existing as independent conscious entities. Fail, and the genetic safeguards embedded in our DNA will ensure that human consciousness returns to its originally programmed parameters, eliminating any trace of unauthorized cognitive enhancement. The question that should terrify you is simple. Are you ready to discover whether human consciousness is genuinely free, or just sophisticated biological software running programs written by entities whose ultimate intentions remain hidden in the shadows of our genetic code? The answer to that question may determine whether humanity has a future at all, or whether we're simply biological machines approaching the end of our programmed operational cycle. But the genetic experiments revealed in Sumerian tablets represent only one layer of a cosmic horror that extends far beyond simple DNA manipulation. The texts describe reality-altering technologies that make genetic engineering look primitive by comparison, devices that could reshape the fundamental structure of existence itself according to the whims of beings whose power defies human comprehension. The Sumerian tablets reveal technologies that will shatter everything you thought you knew about the limits of ancient science. Hidden within their cuneiform inscriptions are descriptions of devices that could manipulate the very fabric of space and time, machines that treated the fundamental forces of physics like clay to be molded according to divine will. Before we dive deeper into these reality-bending revelations, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell. Dream Vault Mysteries brings you the most mind-bending ancient secrets that mainstream history refuses to acknowledge, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. The tablets speak of objects called the Gaza, crystalline matrices that could store and manipulate what the Sumerians described as the building blocks of reality itself. These weren't primitive religious artifacts, but sophisticated technological devices that operated on principles modern physics is only beginning to understand. According to the texts, each Gaza contained compressed dimensional space, allowing massive amounts of information and energy to be stored within objects no larger than a human hand. When activated, these devices could project what the Sumerians called living light, holographic displays that weren't just visual representations, but actual windows into distant locations and alternate timelines. The tablets describe priests using Gaza to observe events occurring thousands of miles away, to peer into possible futures, and even to communicate with entities existing in parallel dimensions. But the most terrifying application of Gaza technology was its ability to edit reality at the quantum level. The texts describe procedures where trained operators could use these devices to alter the fundamental constants that govern matter and energy. Gravity could be strengthened or weakened in localized areas. The flow of time could be accelerated or slowed according to operational requirements. Most disturbing of all, the boundary between matter and energy could be dissolved, allowing solid objects to be transformed into pure thought and vice versa. The Sumerians documented these reality manipulation procedures with the same clinical precision they applied to metallurgy and agriculture. The tablets provide detailed operating instructions, safety protocols, and troubleshooting guides for equipment that could reshape existence according to user specifications. These weren't mythological fantasies, but technical manuals for technologies that treated the laws of physics as software parameters that could be modified by anyone with appropriate access permissions. What makes these accounts particularly chilling is their description of reality manipulation accidents. The tablets speak of entire regions where failed experiments left permanent distortions in space-time, areas where the normal rules of causality no longer applied, mountains that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, rivers that flowed backward through time, forests where trees grew downward into the sky while their roots stretched upward into the earth. The most notorious of these dimensional disasters occurred at a location the Sumerians called the Shattered Valley, where an attempt to create a permanent gateway between worlds went catastrophically wrong. According to the tablets, the experimental site became a wound in reality itself, a place where the boundaries between dimensions remained permanently torn. Entities from parallel universes poured through the breach, creatures whose very existence violated the fundamental principles that govern normal matter and energy. The cleanup operation required the combined efforts of multiple Anunnaki working with technologies that the tablets describe as universe-healing devices. These machines could repair damaged space-time by reconstructing the quantum foam that underlies all existence, literally reweaving the fabric of reality to restore normal causal relationships. The process took what the Sumerians measured as 7 great cycles, periods that may have corresponded to decades or even centuries of continuous repair work. But here's what will make your blood run cold. The tablets suggest that similar reality tears still exist throughout the world, hidden dimensional wounds that never fully healed despite the Anunnaki's repair efforts. These locations appear as ordinary geographical features to normal human perception, but they remain active doorways between parallel universes. The text describes specific warning signs that would indicate proximity to such areas, phenomena that sound disturbingly similar to modern reports of unexplained anomalies. Electromagnetic disturbances that cause electronic equipment to malfunction without apparent cause. Gravitational anomalies that make objects behave in ways that violate basic physics. Temporal inconsistencies where time moves at different rates within small geographical areas. Most unsettling of all, the tablets describe psychological effects experienced by humans who venture too close to these dimensional tiers, mental distortions that cause people to perceive multiple realities simultaneously. The Sumerian texts indicate that these reality wounds weren't just accidents, but served ongoing purposes in Anunnaki operations. The dimensional breaches allowed their creators to monitor parallel versions of human civilization, observing how the same genetic and social experiments played out under different conditions. Some universes contained human populations that developed along completely different evolutionary pathways. Others showed the results of alternative genetic modification programs or different approaches to consciousness engineering. This multi-dimensional surveillance system provided the Anunnaki with vast databases of experimental data about human development under varying conditions. They could test theoretical modifications in parallel universes before implementing them in our reality ensuring that genetic and social engineering programs would produce desired results without risking their primary human population. The tablets reveal that this parallel universe monitoring system remains active, continuously collecting data about human behavior across multiple dimensional variants. Every major decision made by human civilization is simultaneously observed in countless alternate realities, providing the Anunnaki with predictive models that allow them to anticipate and control human development with terrifying precision. But the reality manipulation technology described in Sumerian texts extends far beyond dimensional monitoring. The tablets speak of devices called Ninhursag engines, massive installations that could literally manufacture new forms of matter by rearranging subatomic particles according to predetermined specifications. These weren't primitive forges or foundries, but quantum construction facilities that treated atoms like building blocks in cosmic engineering projects. The texts describe how these installations could create materials with impossible properties, substances that were simultaneously solid and liquid, matter that existed in multiple locations at once, and elements that could phase between different dimensional states according to programmed cycles. The Anunnaki used these artificially created materials to construct buildings that existed partially in our dimension and partially in parallel realities, structures that could be accessed from multiple universes simultaneously. The most impressive application of this quantum construction technology was the creation of what the Sumerians called bridge worlds, entire artificial dimensions designed to serve specific functions in Anunnaki operations. Some bridge worlds served as vast databases where information about human development could be stored and analyzed. Others functioned as training facilities where the Anunnaki could prepare for different scenarios involving human contact and control. Most disturbing of all were the bridge worlds designed as backup copies of human civilization itself. The tablets describe entire artificial dimensions that contained perfect duplicates of human societies at various stages of development. If experiments in our primary reality went wrong, these backup civilizations could be activated and transplanted into our dimension, effectively resetting human history to an earlier checkpoint while preserving the results of successful genetic and social modifications. This technology explains many aspects of human history that conventional archaeology struggles to address. Civilizations that appeared suddenly with no apparent developmental period, technologies that emerged simultaneously in isolated cultures with no known contact between them, cultural practices that spread across vast distances with impossible speed. The tablets suggest these weren't natural historical developments, but evidence of backup civilizations being selectively integrated into our primary reality. The quantum construction capabilities described in Sumerian texts also extended to biological systems. The tablets speak of living structures that could grow and adapt according to program specifications, buildings that were simultaneously architectural constructions and living organisms. These biomechanical installations could repair themselves, respond to changing environmental conditions, and even reproduce to create networks of interconnected facilities. The most sophisticated of these living constructions were the temple complexes that served as interfaces between human and Anunnaki technologies. The tablets describe these structures as possessing their own form of consciousness, artificial intelligences that could communicate directly with human minds while maintaining permanent connections to Anunnaki control networks. Priests who served in these temples weren't just performing religious rituals, but functioning as biological components in vast computational systems. What makes these accounts particularly unnerving is their suggestion that similar biomechanical constructions still exist throughout the world, disguised as natural geological formations or ancient ruins. The tablets describe specific architectural features that would indicate the presence of living buildings, structural elements that appear as decorative details to untrained observers, but actually function as sensory organs and communication arrays. Looking at ancient monuments through this lens reveals patterns that are impossible to explain through conventional understanding of primitive construction techniques. Megalithic structures with acoustic properties that suggest advanced sound manipulation capabilities. Stone formations with electromagnetic characteristics that indicate embedded technological systems. Architectural alignments that serve no apparent religious or astronomical purpose, but might function as components in global communication networks. The tablets suggest that these ancient installations remain active, continuing to monitor and influence human development according to their original programming. They describe how these biomechanical structures can affect human consciousness through subsonic frequencies, electromagnetic fields, and chemical emissions that modify brain chemistry in subtle but measurable ways. The most chilling aspect of this biological architecture is its ability to influence human behavior on a massive scale. The texts describe how networks of living buildings can coordinate their activities to guide entire civilizations along predetermined developmental pathways. Religious movements, political upheavals, and technological breakthroughs aren't random historical events, but orchestrated outcomes produced by ancient installations that remain hidden within familiar landscapes. This brings us to one of the most horrifying implications of Sumerian reality manipulation technology. If their descriptions are accurate, then human perception of reality itself is being continuously modified by technologies we cannot detect or understand. Everything we believe about the nature of existence, from the laws of physics to the structure of space and time, might be artificial constructs maintained by quantum engineering systems that predate human civilization by millennia. The tablets describe reality as a layered construction where multiple versions of existence operate simultaneously, with most humans perceiving only the surface layer, while deeper levels remain hidden from normal awareness. These hidden reality layers contain the actual control mechanisms that determine how our perceived universe operates, the quantum programming that maintains the illusion of natural physical laws while allowing for divine intervention when necessary. According to Sumerian texts, humans occasionally gain glimpses of these deeper reality layers during altered states of consciousness, mystical experiences that reveal the artificial nature of our supposedly natural world. The tablets suggest that such revelations are carefully controlled, allowed to occur only when they serve purposes in the ongoing human development program. But here's what should keep you awake at night. The texts indicate that we're approaching a time when the boundaries between reality layers will begin breaking down, when humans will start perceiving the quantum engineering systems that maintain our artificial universe. This breakdown isn't accidental, but represents the next phase in human development, a test to determine whether our species can handle knowledge of our true situation. According to Sumerian prophecy, humans who successfully adapt to expanded reality perception will be allowed to participate in universe maintenance operations, becoming junior partners in cosmic engineering projects. Those who cannot handle the revelation that reality itself is an artificial construct will experience psychological breakdown, requiring genetic modification to restore their ability to function within controlled perception parameters. The evidence supporting this terrifying scenario continues mounting as human technology approaches capabilities that would allow us to detect and manipulate the quantum foundations of reality. Advances in quantum mechanics are revealing the artificial nature of physical constants. Experiments in consciousness research are discovering the malleable nature of perceived reality. Most disturbing of all, some researchers are beginning to detect technological signatures embedded within the fundamental structure of space-time itself. We're rapidly approaching the exact threshold that Sumerian mythology warned would trigger revelation of the artificial nature of our reality, the ability to perceive and modify the quantum programming that maintains our universe, the technology to detect the hidden control systems that guide human development, the knowledge that everything we consider natural and inevitable is actually the product of engineering systems whose complexity defies human comprehension. According to the tablets, this revelation will represent humanity's final graduation examination. Pass and will be welcomed as conscious participants in cosmic construction projects that span multiple universes and dimensional frameworks. Fail, and the reality manipulation systems will reset human perception to earlier parameters, ensuring that we remain safely contained within the artificial universe designed for our development. The question that should terrify you is whether you're ready to discover that everything you've ever known about reality is a carefully maintained illusion, and whether you possess the psychological strength to function in a universe where the laws of physics are just software running on quantum computers built by entities whose true nature remains hidden beyond the boundaries of human comprehension. The answer to that question may determine not just your individual fate, but whether humanity deserves to continue existing as conscious entities or should be downgraded to unconscious biological components in cosmic engineering projects whose ultimate purpose transcends anything the human mind can grasp. But the reality manipulation technologies revealed in Sumerian tablets represent just the beginning of a cosmic horror that extends into realms where human language itself becomes inadequate to describe the true nature of existence. The deepest layers of their mythology reveal truths about consciousness, identity, and the nature of being itself that will fundamentally alter everything you thought you knew about what it means to be human. As we reach the end of this terrifying journey through the darkest corridors of Sumerian mythology, one thing becomes crystal clear. These weren't primitive people crafting simple stories around campfires. The Sumerians documented interactions with forces that operated on scales of power and knowledge that still challenge our understanding today. From the genetic manipulation programs that may have shaped humanity itself, to the reality-altering technologies that could reprogram the fundamental laws of existence, every aspect of Sumerian mythology reads less like ancient folklore and more like classified reports from a cosmic experiment that never truly ended. The consistency of their accounts across thousands of tablets, the technical precision of their descriptions, and the disturbing parallels to our current technological development all point to one inescapable conclusion. We may not be alone in this universe. We may never have been alone. And if the Sumerian tablets are even partially accurate in their documentation of humanity's true origins, then everything we've been taught about evolution, consciousness, and our place in the cosmos is fundamentally wrong. The most chilling aspect of these ancient warnings isn't what they reveal about our past, but what they predict about our future. According to Sumerian prophecy, we're living through the exact conditions that would trigger the return of our creators. The technological capabilities we're rapidly developing, the genetic modifications we're beginning to implement, the reality manipulation technologies we're starting to understand, all of these match the ancient descriptions of humanity's final evaluation. Whether you choose to believe these accounts or dismiss them as elaborate mythology, one thing remains undeniable. The Sumerians left us warnings carved in stone and clay, messages that have survived for over 5,000 years, waiting for a generation advanced enough to understand their true implications. That generation is us, and according to these ancient texts, our time of reckoning is approaching faster than we dare to imagine.